Kyle, you've been so great being on the show nearly an hour, so I don't want to keep you on for too long, but I would love your perspective on the brand new ownership. You know those guys pretty well now over the last 4 years, and I watched your Dane Moore and Dane Moore podcast interview with them. I'm just curious, like from the perspective of Timberwolves fans, what was your takeaway just talking to them over the years about what they're going to bring to the franchise?
I think anytime you make a change or a transition, there's risk, right? I mean, there's a reason that people are risk averse or they don't like. I, in my personal life, fear change because as you change from your comfort zone to something else, that you bring on inherent risk. You don't know what that could be. Glenn Taylor was pretty safe, albeit not super successful. A lot of the things he didn't lead to winning. Yes, I know he saved the franchise from moving, but I think it was like anything, it just become really stale. I think it became stale on the business side. I think it became stale just front office wise. Again, a lot of the changes that have happened, right? Big game hunting to go get Tim Connolly, which then leads to a big game hunting Rudy Gobert trade. All this stuff have been under Tim Connolly's watch, which was a Marc and Alex move, the new ownership group. So It took way too long. I don't think you'll ever see again an ownership sale that takes 4 years. Obviously, the last year was all about the legal process. But Marc Lore's big thing is like vision, capital, people. They clearly have the capital. The NBA has reviewed all of their bank accounts, and they have the money to not only buy the team, but run the team. The vision, I think, is like the TBD part. They've talked about it on when we did the interview. They'll talk about it in a couple weeks at a press conference in Vegas, what they think for this team. But their vision's kind of been stamped already by getting good people in place and then letting those people make decisions, right? Like, from what I understand, Marc and Alex are very hands off when it comes to basketball decisions, as they should be. They're not basketball people. Tim is a basketball guy, and he's made a lot of good moves. So I think it was just time. I think Marc Lore is going to do a ton of stuff on like fan experience, the business side, making it a better experience for fans. I wouldn't be surprised if they dim the lights in the lower bowl at Target Center to kind of make it more of that theater style you see at Madison Square Garden or even at Staples Center. And then on the player side, the business side, like Alex is going to have a huge role in that. We can laugh about it, but those guys look up to a guy that played at the highest level, made a ton of money, hit 696 home runs. It's easier for Anthony Edwards to relate to what he's going through with Alex Rodriguez than it is for Anthony Edwards to relate to what he's going through with Glenn Taylor. So that'll be really big. But again, they're going to make mistakes. And I think that's what's going to be fascinating. You don't typically, I mean, you're a Vikings fan, you're a fan of a lot of teams. Like, you're not usually fans of your ownership. Like, they're kind of out of sight, out of mind. These guys have been in sight a lot because it's just everyone was dying for them to take over. So I expect them to continue to that VCP model, invest in the best people, which will then allow that vision to be carried out. And you can't do all of that without having the capital. And in 4 years, man, you want to talk about like a presidential term, this thing is pretty much doubled, if not double and a half in value. This is not a $1.5 billion franchise, especially with all the teams that have sold. This thing's probably like $3.5 billion now. So that doesn't mean that you have $2 extra billion in your bank account. That's not how valuations work, but it does mean that your house has a lot of equity that you should be able to invest in making sure that this is a world-class organization. And that is something that on a daily basis they talk about, is they want to kind of be in the market what the Vikings are. And while the Vikings haven't won a Super Bowl, I don't know of anyone that wouldn't think that the Vikings are anything less than a world-class organization.
I think it's really cool, just like you mentioned, that we've kind of seen a lot of their intentions early on. We saw how aggressive they were getting Tim Connolly a couple of years ago. And then after they got kind of the staffing that they wanted, it was pretty hands off for a couple of years. Like you saw, Marc Lore with the shoes in his hands in the start of games. And that was pretty cool. But, I grew up in a small business environment, and I definitely witnessed firsthand, it is so much better to have a business when you trust your managers than when you're overseeing every single little detail all the time. First of all, you get burned out. But number two, sometimes decisions kind of get cross off the wrong way when you're considering so many different factors as an owner. So I think it's really great that they've had a very hands-off approach to start this Timberwolves tenure. But I think you made a great point. Just, you know, let's not let the Minnesota PTSD mess with us. If one mistake doesn't mean 10 straight are coming, right? These seem like very calculated, you know, aggressive yet reserved people who, when they make a mistake, it's logical, it's calculated, and if you make enough calculated decisions, maybe 80% of them work and 20% don't, but you're still trending up. So I think there's a lot of reason for everything you mentioned why Minnesota fans should be optimistic about this brand new ownership. And I have a question just about, on top of not only just the stadium, because I think that's a big part, you know, the operations within the organization. I feel like for even winning organizations, every single winning organization has like a certain brand that they hang their hat on, right? Of course, the Lakers, it's Showtime, it's legacy, it's, you know, aesthetic, it's cool. New York, it's passionate, it's blue collar, it's very just like united. Or San Antonio, it's very calculated and professional. There's a wide range. There's not just winning organizations, there's styles of winning organizations. Heat culture, right? What do you think, just from kind of watching them and listening a little bit, what is that brand for the Minnesota Timberwolves that they hope they're building?
I think that's a fascinating question and really smart question. And it makes me think of everything but sports, because like I too, like I got my MBA and I went to the business school and I've been in business for a long time. And like this idea of changing your brand, like you can't force it, right? Like all
Mhm.
the stuff you just mentioned and all, like whether it be the Spurs and a history of success or Heat culture or the Lakers, those are all things that are like a 30-year, it took 30 years to have that brand, right? So you can't just be like, hey, in August, our new brand is this. Like I would
We're
say
cool
over the
now.
right, yeah, like, hey, look at this. Like now we're whatever. So I think over the last 4 years, part of their brand has been winning. And that's what they've done, right? Like this is the most successful 4-year period, and you can credit anyone, right? Probably should credit Ant first and foremost, but Finch has been there for those 4 or 5 years. This ownership group has been behind the scenes. So I go back to that Vikings thing because we've talked about it with them. Is like when I think of the Vikings being a world class organization, it's not because of a style of play or what shade of purple their jerseys are. It's the fact that I think it's every summer, right? They do the player votes of like what organization treats wives well. I'm sure as a fan, you don't care when you tune in to watch a game, any of that stuff. You just want to win, but that stuff matters. You just talked about like a comp at your local job or your career. Like if you're crabby at work because your spouse is crabby, it's going to affect your production. So I
Mhm.
think the Vikings handle all of that stuff really well. Like I'd heard in the past, I don't know how long ago this was, but like that sometimes the Timberwolves players had to pay for Wi-Fi on plane rides. Like getting rid of those little things is like, how do we make this a world-class experience for the players, their significant others, their agents, their families, so that people want to come here, right? Because you can't warm up the state. There's 10,000 lakes, and I love Minnesota, but you can't change some of the things that people think about in your head. But if you're coming here because you know your family's going to be taken care of and you're going to get all these little extra things behind the scenes that'll allow you to just hoop, I think that's what they're going to focus on in terms of their branding and organically just hope that, hey, we're a world-class organization, 4 years from now, because all we've done is constantly treat people well, treat agents well. That second round situation you talked about, I don't think they did very well in the second round of the draft, but I think Tim Conley did a couple favors to keep good relationships with agents rather than just being like, we're going to take your guy, screw it. I think that matters too. And that's what, when you circle back, maybe you get a guy that takes a little discount to come here and stuff. So building up the organization and a lot of stuff you don't see will be huge for them, but also rebranding, like literally logo, jerseys. I think some of that stuff is very much on the forefront because I don't know if when Ant enters his prime, I want him to look like a sailor. Like I don't like those jerseys anymore. So they need to get the right people on the business side, like they did on the basketball side, to then start working on that. And then again, for the fans, fan experience, decently priced tickets for families to get in, good concession stands. Not everything can just continue to raise and raise and raise. And then a stadium that is just, or an arena that is just a better experience, because Target Center has a special place in all of our hearts, but it's not a good basketball arena. You go to any other team in the league, it's like that place has so many more bells and whistles. And I think fans now that have stuck it out, they have a good product on the court, but they should be able to experience a good night out, whether that be in downtown Minneapolis or in a suburb. So that arena is going to be something I'm keeping a close eye on. I also don't think it's close. Like, I think it takes a long time to figure that stuff out, but the fans deserve not only a good team, but a good experience.
Yeah, that you just made some amazing points that there's so many factors that go under the umbrella of what your brand is. Not only just the time period it takes to build that consistent brand, right? Like, I'm sure you've seen Can't Buy Me Love, right?
Yep.
And, the nerdy kid tries to buy his way into being popular, then it kind of blows up in his face by February. You can't do that. You can't just change everything right away and expect everything to stick. But like you said, the little details, right? From the branding of the jerseys, right? Like you said, Anthony Edwards in his prime, like, do we want him wearing the same jersey as Jimmy Butler, right? I don't think so. So, like, changing the brand, there's a lot of complaints about the jerseys. The stadium is a big one. I hope this, I'm totally biased. I'm speaking this from total bias, no logic. You know what? There's a lot of space in Arden Hills, Minnesota. If anybody, there's a lot of space there. So, A-Rod, Marc Lori, I would suggest you look in there. You can also build your own retail there. So,
Yeah, and I think that'll be it's a big project, right? Not just the
yeah.
actual arena, but I think you're seeing more and more arenas, especially if they're privately funded, which they should be, having that space around the arena, right? To kind of make it an all-encompassing, retail, hotels, all that stuff. Again, it's not the same, but like what the Vikings did with the hotel and the training facility out there in Eagan, it's a pretty cool experience. So I think the one good thing, like the 4-year transition layaway plan, clearly drove us all crazy. I think it drove Marc and Alex crazy. But I think the one good thing that it allowed you to do, and you were down in Arizona for a little bit, so I know you can speak on this, is that and they said this to us, like, it prevented them from really having that new owner syndrome. And we'll see. They've only been officially the new owners, governors for about a week now. So maybe they still get that itch, but they got a house that has doubled in value, but they never fully got the keys to that house to come in and tear down walls or blow up, a side of the house. And I think it forced them to learn some patience. And they'll have, we all have questions about what they'll do moving forward. But I do think that excitement of anytime you get something new or it's yours, that was kind of held off because of how this all took place. And I think that's huge because maybe you don't like the Joe Ingles signing, or maybe you don't like the Julius extension, but those are pretty minor compared to, like, not to bleep on them, but what Matt Ishbia has done with the Suns, who came in and got so excited. And it's like all of a sudden that roster is almost unfixable. I think the Wolves and the Wolves fan base avoided a massive new owner syndrome situation because of how this all played out.
And we don't know exactly what's going to happen over the next 10 years with the Anthony Edwards window. Of course, if they win titles with Anthony Edwards, that's going to really help however they shape that brand. But also just, I think it's going to be really exciting for fans to just watch, like, what personality does this team really build? Right now, it appears to be fun, modern, dynamic. That seems to be the personality of the roster, the personality of the ownership. If that can expand to, like, a new stadium that feels more modern and cool new branding and just an experience at the game where, like, as Judd and Phil said on Score North, it doesn't feel like a mama papa shop anymore.
Yep.
It feels like a dynamic modern franchise, like what the Clippers are trying to build, like what a lot of new teams that are trying to invest in new stadiums. Minnesota just really needs to get out of the grandma's basement of the NBA and prove they can own their own house in a way that's fun, modern, dynamic, and whatever personality, in my opinion, that shapes out of that, it'll be cool and it'll be positive, even if we don't know exactly what that is.
And we talked about JJ McCarthy a little bit. Like, I think about the Twins in this topic. The Twins have one of the best baseball stadiums in the country. Like, if you go to or like Target Field rocks on a June night in downtown Minneapolis. And I also really like the Twins branding. I like their jerseys. I like their colors. No one cares about them right now because they don't win games. And all the other stuff, right, is really important. And I think Marc and Alex are going to turn a really bright light and try to fix some of those things. But if they don't win games, you're not going to buy a jersey, even if it's an awesome new rebranded jersey, right? Like, you want this team to be solely focused on having the right people in place to make business or basketball decisions. and they have that nailed down. And as long as they kind of stay out of it, they can call in the picks from the war room, but as long as they kind of stay out of it and let Tim and Matt Lloyd and those guys make the decisions and focus on other stuff that you and I can experience, I think it'll be a really good partnership. And it should be, an exciting new era. As I've kind of coined this like the golden age of Timberwolves basketball. Not a lot of other stuff to compare it to, but they are embracing that, Ant, every year he gets older, we're going to have heightened expectations. And if this thing ultimately doesn't bring one title, I think we'll all be disappointed. So stacking those chips, setting up those dominoes one by one, I think they're going to continue to do that. And it'll be it's a lot more fascinating to cover this team now, right? Like I know when you got into this, there are some lean years, man, where it's like, what do I get excited about? Like you said, we got excited about second round picks. I didn't even watch the second round now. Like, let's just watch a really good team come October and see what they can do in a really competitive Western Conference and NBA.
My dad, the golden age line, by the way, is fantastic. I've used it a couple times. And my dad, he's kind of put his slogan. He just has always said, I strive for the 6th seed. That's just his thing for years. So I remember like we would do videos. We were at an event a couple years ago and Minnesota won a game and we're the 6th seed for like 10 minutes. He made sure to like distract the event and just put up the camera and go, we are the 6th seed. And then everybody started celebrating. So like, we want to get away from that. We want to get away from that and build your best chance. You can't control fate, but if you could put yourself in the best calculated position to win a title, I think that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, again, the idea of building a team to stop one team. If everyone in the East had built a specific roster to beat the Celtics because they thought that's kind of the new dynasty, all it takes, and again, knock on wood, is just one bad injury to a guy to completely flip the script. And you hope that no one gets injured in the West. But I think building something that's sustainable, has some continuity into it, but also has multiple exit ramps and departures that if this doesn't work, we can pivot off those two guys and bring in someone else. That is the modern NBA. And so far it's set up well. But again, as we've talked about now, they have some holes that need to be filled. And luckily for them and luckily for the fans, there's about 3.5 months until real basketball is back in our lives. So, because don't forget, Summer League is going to be fun for you and I. It is not real basketball. It is some of the lowest, empty calorie basketball that we get to experience, but it'll be fun.
It's fun. It's cheap. You can network.
It is cheap. That's a good point. Yep.
Yeah. So anybody who hasn't gone to the Summer League, the first time I went was a couple years ago. Like once you get to Vegas, it's like $40 a day to go to like as many games as you want. It's great. So I highly recommend anybody going to Las Vegas for the Summer League in the future. And Kyle, just thank you so much for taking the time on this episode. We're at 1:15 now, so we pushed it. Thank you for just taking all the time that you did.
Absolutely, man. I'm really excited about this. Again, if you're listening to this is going to be one of the new, I think, consistent pods in your Rolodex of weekly coverage coming to the Timberwolves. So you've been doing this for a while. You went to school for this. You know what you're doing. So I'm sure this won't be the first or the last time, I should say, we talk. But I'm really happy for you, proud of you. And this will definitely be something I'm subscribed to moving forward.
Amazing, Kyle. Yes, absolutely. This is going to be something that will be consistent. It'll be intentional. My DMs are wide open, everybody. I always want to learn how I can get better. I'm not walking in like I'm going to do this and do this like Matt Ishba in Phoenix. Sorry, Matt. But I genuinely want this to be a great fan experience. So if there's any way I can make this a better product, if you have new ideas, I'm going to be happy to hear it and we'll build on it. And thank you, everybody, so much. This is Wilder Wolves Hall of Fame Mode Fandom.